Started. Just dial volume to the right level. It's not quite cooperating. Okay. Welcome to our July Friday Forum. We are going to be talking about the 2020 census. And there's been a lot of conversation in the news. I don't know that all of the interesting details have actually been fleshed out by people talking in the news, because it's all been about this immigration question that the Trump administration wanted on the questionnaire. But I don't know that we've actually gotten a whole lot of information about the census. So let me just quickly introduce the panel, and then I'm going to come to the person who knows about this stuff, or at least she better, and let her fill us in on what's going on. Commissioner Michelle Stone is here. She's been passing out petition cards, so if you can sign those, she'll be on the ballot. It doesn't commit you to voting for her, it simply puts her on the ballot. That's all it does. We have Whitfield Jenkins next to her. Everybody knows Whitfield from his long-term efforts in civil rights. He is president of the Liberation of Ocala African American Council locally. He has a long history with NAACP and was involved with the 2000 census for NAACP. Channa Lloyd, who is partnership specialist for the 2020 U.S. Census. She does marriage counseling also as a partnership specialist. So, yeah, you can see her later. By appointment, $80 an hour. So, like that? Yeah, I thought so. David Boston is a housing specialist at the city of Ocala. We've seen David at Bridges meetings and other places around. So it's great to have all of you with us. Now, I was listening to the radio. Was it this morning? No, it wasn't this morning. It must have been yesterday morning. That in 2000, I think Florida was one of the states with one of the worst undercounts, either 1990 or 2000. That caused a lot of concern for then governor in 2009, Charlie Crist, who made a big deal about making sure that all Floridians were counted for the census. And of course the numbers improved. 2019, Governor DeSantis has said, that's a federal job. We're not going to do anything. So we could talk about motivations for that and what that's all about, but it's kind of curious because there are a whole lot of things wrapped up in census counts, and I know Channa's going to tell us a lot about that. And how do we count people? How do we improve our count? So I'm going to ask you to take that microphone. It should be ready to go. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, besides that you do marriage counseling on the side, and tell us about the 2020 census.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for having me here, and thank you for all of you coming out, because it's a very important topic and one that's really close to each and every one of you, even if you don't realize it yet. My background is that I am an attorney outside of working with the census, but they call me and they say come in and work with the counties, and I do because it's something that I'm very impassioned about and I believe in, because it affects us in our everyday life even when we're not aware. The census has been happening since 1790. It is mandated by the U.S. Constitution that we take account of everyone living in the United States every 10 years. Why do we do this? There's two reasons: power and money. The power is our representation. Every 10 years, our representation in the House is reapportioned depending on where the population is. So when he previously mentioned that Florida gained 2 additional seats in the House, we're now the 3rd largest state. Due to our population increase in 2010, we are now the 3rd largest state. California is the first, Texas is the second, and we beat out New York. That was because we had a response rate of 74%, which means we increased our response rate. So because we have increased population, we need more representation. So that's how that happens. The second thing that impacts very heavily are our dollars. We're talking about over $674 billion across 10 years. That amounts to somewhere about $4 trillion. Now you're asking me, I don't see this money, it doesn't come to me, it doesn't come to you. Where does it go? We're talking about programs such as Head Start, Pell Grants, roads and highways, health services, lunches at schools. We're talking about adoption assistance, disabled veterans. We're talking about firefighters assistance. We're talking about programs that actually touch you every day and you're not even aware. That is determined, how those funds are distributed is based on population. So if we're not counting our people, we're not getting the resources that should be coming into our communities. So that's really important. Now, how did we do? 74% responded, but if you think about that, and that's across the US, we're talking about 1 in 4 people did not respond. Think about that. That is a significant amount of money across 10 years that we're leaving on the table for our states and our counties and our cities. Now, what's new and why don't people respond? What we found is we have what we call hard to count areas. There are typically areas that have a lower response rate than other areas. Why do we have them? Well, we've noticed there's certain characteristics about some of our hard to count areas. Things like high population of renters, high population of students, high population of people who've never taken a census before, small children. Children under the age of 5 are actually our largest age group that's not counted and not reported on the census. I think of it like this. When you go to a restaurant, kids under 2 eat free. When you fly, kids under 2 eat free, so people don't report them. But think about this. Over the 10 years that child is going to go to elementary school, they're going to go to junior high, they're going to be using these resources. So if you're born on April 1 of census, which is 2020, you should be counting them. But these are the things that we've noticed in these hard to count areas. How do we reach out to hard to count areas and everyone else to let them know the census is coming? We form complete count committees. Complete count committees are a group of trusted voices within the community that have come together to determine how do we get this message out to our members of community? How do we get this information? How do we package it? How do we get it so people know why we should answer the census and why it's important? Complete count committees are formed at the state level, although our governor has decided we are not forming one at the state level, at the county level and at the city level. So it's now very incumbent on us on a county and a city level to ensure that we are getting this message out, that we are participating and ensuring that these funds are coming into our communities. Now, what's different about this census? It's the first time it's going to be completely online. You're not going to get a mailed paper form. You're going to get a postcard that has almost like a promo code on it. You're going to take that code and go online and report your census. There will be a website where you can go on. You can get on a phone, an iPad, a laptop, anything that can access the internet. Now, I know a lot of you are saying a lot of areas here in Florida are rural. We have people that don't have access. There is a 1-800 number that will be distributed, that we will communicate, that you can actually call and speak with someone. They can either provide you assistance or they'll complete their form with you. They have now decided that normally when you don't answer, someone comes and knocks on your door, right? You remember this? Someone will come and knock and say, hi, you haven't filled out your census, please complete it. That is still going to happen, but should you not respond, you will now automatically receive a mailer. So if someone doesn't respond, they will receive the paper form, but then they have to mail it back. So when we look to speak about this in the communities, we really want to gear people towards the easiest method, telephone. Everyone these days has a cell phone. So if you can't get access to the internet or you're not comfortable, then we want you to pick up the phone and call and let us help you complete your census questionnaire. The other really important part of the census that we like to communicate to are our jobs. We are the largest peacetime operation here in the United States. We employ locally from any given area that we're working in. So if you're in Marion County, we want you to work in Marion County. Why? You understand your community. You understand the areas and the people that you're going to be talking to. They're familiar with you. So that's why we look to hire indigenously from the particular given area. The big other topic for the census is the citizenship question. Hasn't been determined whether or not it's going to be on there or not because they were going through litigation. As far as the census is concerned, this has been something that is a hot button topic. It's always been. The citizenship question has been on the census previously, and we had a very similar type of battle to fight. We have to educate people that there's a few things. The census is never going to ask you for sensitive information. We never ask for your social security. We never ask you for your banking pins, donations, anything on behalf of a political party. So please know that. Also, the information that you provide to the census is protected. First, it's sealed for 72 years. By the time it comes out, either we're not here, we don't care. The other thing about the census is that there's Title 13. This information is protected. We don't share it with any other governmental agency. None at all. Now you're asking, yeah, but then how do you guys know how many people are there? We report everything in the aggregate. The aggregate means that in a tract, which is probably more than about 15 blocks, we tell them there's so many people in this radius, what we call a census tract. So we're not reporting information on Channa Lloyd at 123 Maple Street. we're reporting on a whole census tract. And that's how the information is given, and that's how people are able to tabulate that, well, in Marion County, I've had an increase in this population, so these federal programs need more dollars because there's now an increase in population. So that's the information I wanted to give you as a background before we start the panel, and again, thank all of you for coming to participate in this.
Great, thank you. So old folks like my mother-in-law, who is prone to picking up the phone every time it rings, should be aware that census won't be calling you.
Yes, we don't call you. It actually is, first of all, it's self-response, which means you have to willingly do it, which is why we come out to educate you on why it's so important for you and your community to answer. Secondly, it's self-identification. We don't tell you how to fill out the form. We explain your options to you, and then you self-identify.
Very good. Why she answers the phone every time, I don't know, because she can't hear him anyway. So it doesn't, specific question, Deborah?
Yes.
Because I was going to get to Q&A later.
No, not as a question, a comment.
Comment.
A comment. If I'm not mistaken, before I left home, the citizen thing was blocked.
We
Yeah.
haven't, so the way, as a federal employee, the way it works is until I get a mandate that says that I can say that, I can't go on what CRN says. Just saying, I want to keep a job.
All right, Deborah, you will behave yourself from now on, right? Thank you very much. Oh, Loretta, are you good? You're just as bad as she is.
No, but it's in reference to something that you said.
Okay.
And our infamous governor has said that this is a federal thing, so that Florida is not going to get. But how's the federal government going to come into Florida to do the things that they need to do with him as our chief officer not wanting Florida to participate? We be denied money, or what's going to happen? With him with that kind of
So, well, first, it is a mandate that everyone gets counted. It is up to the governor to determine whether or not there is something very specific called a state complete count committee, whether or not that's formed. He's made the decision that one at the state level will not be formed. We always form them at the state, county, city, and other municipality level. So it just becomes more incumbent on our communities, our counties, and our cities to take a very active role. So it's now on us. We have accepted, and we can't really address why or why not he's made that decision. Obviously, again, I'm a federal employee, and the census, we're in the middle. We make no comment about that. But what we know now is that we have a different level of work, because if it's not being done across the state, it comes down to the counties and the cities to take this up. It comes down to individuals and groups that are very active and trusted within your community to make this something that we are all aware of.
Perfect segue. So, David, let me start with you. For the city of Ocala, you guys care who gets counted or who doesn't get counted? Tell me, and why?
Yes, that is, hi, David Boston with the City of Ocala Growth Management Department. I'm a senior planner in that department. The census is very important to us. We use it every day to track changes in our market, changes
That
in our
microphone up,
community.
nice and close.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can everybody hear me now? Okay, good. Sorry about that. We use it every day to monitor changes in our community. And we use it, like Ms. Lloyd brought up, to attract federal and state grant funds for missions that are very important to the city. Affordable housing being a great example. When we have a lack of affordable housing in our community, and we're able to show through the census that we have low-income census tracts in portions of our community, we're able to attract low-income housing tax credit funds and other funds that help us to make that affordable housing provision possible in our community to be able to meet that need. And you could repeat that trend throughout any issue that your government touches. It's important for us to have an accurate count of who's in our community and what are their needs. Something else that might be good to bring up is the fact that we have other portions of the population that are challenging to count too, and that's because sometimes it's hard to find these households if it's some sort of informal housing that they're living in. In some cases, there may be something that the city thinks is a pool house or something in the backyard, and actually it's an accessory dwelling unit. You have cases where families double up with other family members, and we don't know that they're there as a separate household. And so things like that can lead to undercounts in particular subpopulations of our community, particularly those that are low-income households especially. So it's very, very important for us as a community to be able to make sure that everybody is counted.
And you have the same kind of breadth of services that are affected for the city as, because federal dollars are hitting just about everything. I mean, you're in housing, and I'm sure there are plenty of other areas.
Yes, we do, absolutely. And there are ways that the count is important for our private partners as well. You can get special types of financing if it's shown that you're addressing a particular need for certain types of development as well. So it's across the board. Every kind of aspect of government work is touched in some way by being able to have some sort of accurate count as to who's in our community.
Good, thank you. All right, Commissioner Stone, I think it's your turn to tell us about what's going on at the county level.
Well, first of all, thank you for coming, everyone, and I appreciate the invitation to be with you this afternoon and talk about this. My friend over in the city has already explained how that impacts government, so I'll tell you what the county is doing to get started. First off, once Ms. Lloyd contacted us at the city, we met with her small group, including our county administrator and myself as the chair of the commission, and Mr. Risen, Chris Risen, who does a lot of our growth management work within the county. And from that point, we invited her back to address our county commission board, and we determined that I would take the lead on behalf of the county to put together our complete count committee here in Marion County. And I'll tell you, I sat down with my telephone and other contacts and put a very long list together, and we've been reaching out and gathering who was going to actually serve on that complete count committee. And we've been working with Ms. Lloyd and her staff, as well as Karen, who will be our local representative, and she can wave. She works directly with Ms. Lloyd to make sure that we are able to first put a complete count committee together, get our training from Ms. Lloyd and anyone else that she brings to help train us all that day, to then start getting the message out to the community. And once that complete count committee has been trained, we will then go on down to subcommittees to make sure that we are getting to every sector in Marion County and getting those hard to count locations that we may have missed in 2010, so that we do get credit. And again, getting back to the count is so important to the county, we are dedicating resources to make sure that that happens. That will include education, a lot of what Ms. Lloyd said, and I think that's the most important thing, that people may be fearful of not wanting to be truthful and accurate for some reason or another. Those materials, once that information is gathered, gets locked, I'm calling it in the vault, and it's not going to be available until 72 years from now, and I don't think that's going to matter to any of us at that point in time. So just to give people that confidence level that, listen, we really are trying to get that number, because those numbers allow us to draw down federal dollars that are going to impact our community, only to make it better for everybody who's here, whether it's legal or non-legal. We want to make sure that everybody gets counted so that we're able to improve our community with those dollars that are available throughout the United States.
All right, so the county actually has an organized, intentional program for doing the outreach and making sure we get the best count possible. Awesome, great. Whitfield, Jenkins, we have this problem with undercounts, and we have people who get missed in the count. And historically, it's been black folks and minorities who are not well counted. You had some documentation about the numbers and how far off it could be, and you have experience yourself. Do you want to address why it is, what the flaws are that create this kind of problem with counting people?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And first, before I do this, I came in and some people were already seated. I had some information that I wanted as much as possible for each person to have a copy. If you did not have a copy, if you look like this, raise your hand. And I want to ask someone, I don't want to, my wife is eating. Those persons that got their hands up, if someone would make sure that they get a copy, because that would...
That needs
All right, we've got a public servant in the room. She's going to take care of it.
Very good.
I'll go the other direction.
And while they're doing that, let me just say, my name is Whitfield Jenkins. I live here. I was born and raised approximately 15 miles from where I'm standing right now, and I've had the blessings to grow up and go to the Marion County Public School System, be a part of a family. My dad lived to be 103 years old here in this area. I had a chance to be the first in my family to go off to college, come back here. I was a school teacher for 5 years. I raised a family here, and now raising grandchildren here. So Marion County, Ocala is my home, and I know it very, very well. Many of you, Bruce has indicated that I have a long history with the NAACP. My entire family has a long history with the NAACP. My wife here was president of the branch after me for 8 years, and I told Channa here that my daughter, the news media approached my oldest daughter a few years ago, inquiring about our involvement in NAACP, and she said, the Jenkins household is the NAACP household. And she was accurate in that, in terms of all of us were committed to doing NAACP work. It is that background that got me involved with the census in 2000. I held a position with the Florida State Conference NAACP as third vice president in 2000. The NAACP at that time was so concerned after researching the census prior to 2000, which would have been the 1990 census, where blacks were undercounted at a very large rate. Matter of fact, there's about a 4-point-something percentage rate of undercount of blacks, and that concerned the Florida State Conference. They went to Governor Bush, who was governor at that time, and began to express real concern about participation, that minorities should be participating in some leadership role in the census. And believe it or not, Governor Bush accepted that and worked out a process for the Florida State Conference to become a partner with the Florida Census. And in that, it was determined by the Florida State Conference that I would be the person that would lead the Florida State Conference effort. So I was working as a state training officer at the time, and the governor signed a letter that says Whitfield Jenkins will be released from his job to work full-time with the Florida Census. I was given a staff and a budget. I opened an office right on West Broadway. I worked out of that office, and I worked across the state of Florida with 32 NAACP branches from Miami to Jacksonville to Pensacola to initiate local activities where the black organizations and leaders in those communities were involved in actually assisting in finding those hard-to-count people. And at the conclusion of the census, they indicated that the 2000 census was the most accurate count of blacks in the state of Florida in history. Now, somewhere you should be able to go to the census archive files and find that information. But I learned a lot during that process about our government. I learned a lot about our communities. I learned a lot about race issues. And I learned about something that really right now challenges me today. And that is how difficult it is to be optimistic. Because you would believe that if we had the success we had in 2000, that we would be able to say that we are ready to move forward. And then when I see our government in the 2000 And the 2019 census, our governor indicates that it is the census of 2020 is strictly a federal. That really was tough. It really was tough for me to read that. But I want you to, the information I gave you, I want you to review it. There are a couple of key things I want to point you to. When you look at the 2 news releases that are in that package, both of those news releases were put out through the state news release center. Did you know that there was never a mention here in my hometown in any news meetings of the road? I had a roll from the state, from the governor, and was doing the entire state program, and not one word was mentioned right here in my hometown. So that's a lesson learned for me. You'll see that I went to a training program. They sent me to a training program in Alexander, Virginia for 2 days. And I put in there for the curriculum that I set up in a classroom for 2 days and went through. If you look on the last, as we were getting ready to close out, you'll see that there were remarks by regional directors. Those regional directors and the people from the census here knows this, that those positions are set in structure. The president appoints those persons. They are confirmed by the U.S. Senate for the tenures of the role. I have a business card that I was privileged to meet an outstanding black person who was a regional director at that time. His name was James F. Holmes. He was so mystified when he came to the program and saw me in the program, because if you look on that state, there was not another person of color there except for myself. He was so mystified as to my role. You were here. He took me out to lunch. He shared to me that he had been involved in 3 previous censuses. This would have been his 4th, meant he would have been across 40 years as a regional director. If he did the 2010 census, that meant that he did 50 years. And what he shared with me was the experiences that he had gained on diversity challenges in that luncheon that he took me to. And believe me, that was worth $1 million for me to come back to Florida and work under that kind of knowledge with the environment that I worked on. But the thing that I'm most pleased with was that at the conclusion, the report said that we had the best count of blacks in the state of Florida in the history of the census. Now, today I'm here, I know, and this is why I want to thank Delphine for putting this together, because I had not seen, was not aware of any of the local efforts until Delphine called me and I began to find out, and Michelle's name came up and David's name came up in the city, because what I'm left with today is the ability to go back and start communicating with these folks here to determine what we're going to do for our local community. That's my interest. I told Chantel here that right now my interest is not statewide, it is our local community. Thank you.
Whitfield, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but you mentioned all that you learned from Mr. Holmes. What were some of the obstacles that were thrown up for this? Go into that in a little more detail.
Yeah, he shared with me that sadly that there were political dynamics based upon the region, particularly talk about the South, there was not an interest in counting certain minorities, in particular black folks at that time. And at the time, today we have a much more diverse category of minorities than we had back in that period, it was mostly black folks that they were talking about. It wasn't talking about Hispanics and all of these others back there. But he shared to me that there was an attitude by governors and others that really did not have an interest. And they made no effort, no effort such as what we were doing in Florida. That's why he found my position so unique, that he had been through all 3 other censuses and found nothing of the type. And if you all look on that chart for each one of those states that was attending that class at Alexander, Virginia, you'll find that there was no other state that sent 2 persons to that conference except Florida. I want you to look at the 2 Florida names. You'll see David Stage and his role, and you'll see Whitfield Jenkins. No other state that's listed there have two people that attended that conference. And that says that Florida for that year, and I give Jeff Bush his credit as a Republican governor, because the NAACP was challenging his administration on education and a lot of other things, but he was able to put politics aside and recognize that for the census, that it valued and benefited everyone to work with the NAACP. And he made that courageous decision, a historical decision, and it proved out to be something good.
See, just in summary, political considerations were a primary motivator. Explain, because I thought money drove everything. And you have an undercount, then you're under getting money. I would have thought that would be the trump card, but apparently not. So tell me what the other consideration is, because I can't ask these other folks, because you know.
I've listened here, and Chantel says she can't. I can say it all, because and that's what I was a little bit my concern about. How am I going to position myself in these complete count committees, because I don't want to be roped in where I got to follow suit on what I say. I'm an activist, and I need to be free to say what I need to say. Well, I think most of us here who are watching the news now, and has watched President Trump and all of the comments on the census question, and we also know that they found in a dead man files that was a Republican operative who really stated in there why they wanted the census question. He made it very clear that it was to the Republican advantage that they had not had a full count in terms of political election outcome. And some of you, I hope all of you who keep up with this stuff know that I'm not making this up. They found a Republican operative who died. They went in his computer, and they found a statement. He was the one that they were looking to, and they were paying to advise them on that issue. And he left a record in his computer. So when you take that and you look at the decision that President Trump made, and look at the decision our governor made, you get to be puzzled. But if you just use basic logic, you determine that there are other motives as to why some of these decisions. And I'll share this with you. When the governor, I got the articles that Delphine sent out where the governor made his statement that if this was a federal responsibility, he had no intention of forming anything or putting any budget to it. These are the articles here. My first thought was, where is our Marion County delegation who represent us here in Marion County that was right there? Where's their voice to the governor? I'm talking about Keith Perry, Rob Bradley, Dennis Baxley, Clovis Watson, Charlie Stone, Stan McLean, and Brett Hayes. Where is their voice? In no way, when the governor stepped up and made that situation, when they are looking at what is needed by Marion County in terms of funds and other benefits, there should have been a voice of opposition to the government. Okay, thank you.
All right, good enough. So it's kind of one of those age-old questions: which is more important, money or power? And that answers the question. You can keep the money, but we want the power. Because if you're undercounting minority communities, especially in a state like Florida, and you get a new congressional district, what's the size of a congressional district? About 800,000 or something like that? You may not need to draw one. But if you did draw one, it might not be one for your party. I don't know. So it's kind of an interesting situation. But this is America, 2019. That ain't pretty. So let me go to, are there questions out there that folks have?
I have one.
Let's go over to this side. David, can I ask you to put on your moderator hat and be the microphone guy? It goes only so far. I'm standing on it, so that would help. Shut up, you people. Okay, that's it.
That's all you got.
All right, now let me get out of here.
Excuse me, since we're being recorded, perhaps each person could introduce themselves.
So,
Yeah, if you give your name, and we hold the microphone, just so you know. Yes, I mean, you can hold our hand. We love that. But
You don't want that.
especially you, Judy.
Judy Johnson, two questions. One, the census begins on April 1st. When is the last reporting date that's applicable? And two, how do we define a household in terms of the numbers of people who may be living in a particular construction?
Okay.
So non-response is going to go through, April 1 is a soft deadline. It's the deadline that we ask people to self-respond by because that's when non-response follows. Non-response is going to continue until midsummer. They haven't given me an exact date on that yet, but it continues through midsummer and then that's it. Once those numbers are done, that's when you have until to respond. The second question is, what is a household? A household is the number of people that are living inside that particular structure, whatever it encompasses. It doesn't matter if you're related, it doesn't matter if, whatever the composition of the people they are inside the structure, everyone in that structure should be reported. So if I live in a house that has 4 people, but I have an efficiency that rents out to 2 people, but it does not have a separate address, I should be reporting 6 people. If I live in a household where I have myself, my family, and my granddaughter lives with me, she needs to be added into the count. If you have a pool house that does not have a separate address, everyone that's in that pool house should be counted. So it's everyone within that structure. Does that make sense?
You had another question over there, I think, when? Yeah.
Yeah, Whitfield. You said there was a 74% of people responded the last time. I thought, how do you know if you don't know what 100% is?
I can be loud. So the American Community Survey is something that we do year-round. There's also other things that the Census Bureau, we're not allowed to give our records out, but we can get other records. So we take things like Social Security, we take voters, that's why that lawsuit tried to tie that in. But we get their records, they don't get ours. So we can use those things to extrapolate and determine what the actual population is so we know how much we're actually undercounting. But the census numbers are what they determine on. What we count, what we realize we have an undercount for, they don't allocate towards that. So we can say to them, we've extrapolated to believe this is what 100% is, but that's not what the money is distributed on. It's only distributed on who self-reports.
Yes, good afternoon, Derek Mills. Well, I put on Facebook that we should not respond to the census. However, I realized that would be detrimental to us. So then I put that we should ignore that question, the citizenship question. And if there were, I know he has changed his mind, but with the president, he does it every 2 hours, so we don't know what would happen. So I'm saying I'm going to continue to put, we should ignore that question if it comes up.
So what I'll say is that there are things that make the form valid. That question does not invalidate your form, but We ask that people complete the questionnaire because the information is critical in determining how the funds are distributed. So as a federal employee, I still, and the Census Bureau still advocates that you complete your forms fully.
Thank you. Joyce Carter. Given the 2016 election, how confident are we that our electronic data will be secure?
The census has been working on this for a long time. I mean, clearly, you know, the internet is not new to us. We've been working on things and rolling out other programs across the federal government to get very good at this. They are now at the point where they feel like they are going to be able to protect the data, keep it confidential, and have it secure enough. Now, I don't know the exact method because that's clearly way above what I'm good at. I'm not an IT person, so I apologize. But there is a lot of protection. There's going to be a lot of cross-referencing, double-checking. There's actually a period after non-response, what we call quality assurance, where when we get discrepancies, a physical person must come out and complete a questionnaire with a member of the household. So there are a lot of things that they're building into the system to ensure that that information is kept confidential and protected. Sure. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi, I'm Pat Keefe. I have a question from Michelle Stone. Regarding the Complete Count Committee, which you put together, could you tell us whether or not that committee is well balanced with ethnicities and races and political affiliation?
Thank you for the question. I leaned over to Mr. Jenkins when he sat down and I showed him my first pass at when I made my list that included over 44 people, and my number one is Tiana Green, who is the president of the NAACP. So I started there first in my thought process, and she has agreed to serve. I will share with you, I didn't think about what their political affiliation is, so I can't tell you about that balance, but I can tell you that we are looking to capture everyone, and if Mr. Jenkins will serve, we'll certainly include him, or he may just want to sit on the sideline giving us direction, is what I think I heard him say, that he wants to stay in a position that he can continue to not be, I guess, perhaps monitor of what he would say. But we're including so many people, and the list isn't complete. We'll continue to add to this list of people who we know need to be there. But thinking about the minority community, again, I started with Tiana, as well as there is a lot of migrant farm workers, and that's my neighborhood area. So his name is Chaplain Bob, as we know him, and he serves for many of the farm owners, and they are, I'm going to say, supported by FTVOA, that's Florida Thoroughbred Breeders Association. So you know, I'm thinking as well as I can, and as we bring them in, they will be able to help identify others in those areas that should be serving on this committee, as well as subcommittees as well. By way of, I'm going to say the faith-based organization, who I hope will take the lead on the faith-based is Bernard Tuggerson, and Pastor Tuggerson I know is going to be a great asset for us. So the United Way, who serves many of the programs that are underserved people that actually get those services. You're welcome to look at the list. I didn't make copies for everybody because, again, it's still being put together. All of the mayors for all the municipalities are on here. There's lots of work to do, and it's going to take a lot of people to do it. Thank you.
I just think it's an opportunity for me to say this now. I'm looking at her list, and it's in writing, which means to me it's in draft form. question you ask is so important for her. Before she finalizes that, I would suggest that she really look at that question in terms of the inclusion to make sure that once she identifies the community, that she has given strong consideration to the diversity of all those areas you're saying. And all I'm saying is that you're still at an opportunity, and she's here hearing this, okay? So when she finalizes this list, then she has the advantage of hearing this input today.
I'll just make one follow-up. That was my list. This is the type of list of people who have responded yes at this moment in time. So my longhand was simply my list to give to the people now to start making the outreach effort and contact. And I'm going to say Karen earlier shared with me as she's been in our community talking to people, she has been able to tell me that when she talks to them, oh yeah, I'm already on the complete count committee. So she knows I'm out here doing the job to get started as we get up and running. And there, like I said, there's still work to be done.
And just be aware of the political dynamic that is not in play for either the city or the county. You're still going to have the same number of county commissioners, same number of city councilors, regardless of what happens with the census. Not so at the state level. So that's where the rub comes in. Deborah, you wanted to ask a question?
My name is Deborah Winston. I just want to clarify that time frame for the census.
Oh, I'm sorry. So in March 23rd, you're going to start getting, March 23rd, you'll get the postcards that have that promo code that I mentioned. You are supposed to, and we are asking that you self-respond by April 1st of 2020. So that's when self-response is supposed to be completed by. However, we then move into non-response follow-up. That's when we start sending notices and we start knocking and saying you haven't responded. You can now still respond. That period ends somewhere around, I want to say somewhere around June. They haven't given me the exact date on the hard cutoff. But when the hard cutoff comes, there's no more responding. After that, we move into quality assurance. That's where we're double checking to make sure that all of the information we have is accurate. Then the aggregate numbers in totality are due on the President's desk December 31st of 2020. The numbers that show redistricting and representation is going to come out in spring, sometime April of 2021. So that is the full cycle. You're welcome.
David, would you get Mr. Peeler back there? Yeah, in the back there.
Sorry about that. That was me.
Thank you, Cash Peeler. Specifically, what are the duties of the people who serve on the committee, Michelle, and what's their time frame, and how's this going to mesh with the time frame that you mentioned with the census? So, specifically, what are they doing?
Ms. Lloyd is going to step in and give you a response on what they're going to do, just because I've not been to the full training yet. I've only had one-on-one with her twice. But I can tell you what I've been hearing and learning based on what I've been left all my material to read. And a lot of that's going to depend on these committees. How are they going to get the message out and the outreach? I mean, it could be backpack giveaways, again, to bring people in so that we can talk and make sure that the count was done. So at this point in time, I haven't had my training yet, but what we are doing is getting those people put together and agreeing to serve on that committee. And we haven't set our training date yet, but Ms. Lloyd is working with our county right now to get that set up so that we'll start with the first initial training.
So the process of a complete count committee, just so you have a general overview, and I forgot to mention this, but there are packets that we have in the back that kind of talk about this process if you want to take one before you leave, and I have business cards if you would like. A complete count committee, once we establish who's on the committee, we do a complete count committee kickoff. This is a 2-hour process where we do training. We educate them on the purpose of a complete count committee, why the census is important. They get a complete full background. They also understand that the complete count committees have a life cycle. Life cycle starts with education. That's where we are. In the fall, we're in education phase. Starting in January to March, we're in awareness phase. So everything that the complete count committee starts working on, the reason that we have complete count committees are because I'm a federal employee. There's only so many things I can say, as Mr. Jenkins pointed out. However, the people that participate on the complete count committee are partners. So they take the information that I provide as a base and they tailor it. When they're going into the schools, they should be on podcasts, they should be on social media, they should have some cute hashtag, some slogan that they make up, count Marion and make it count, whatever it might be. They need to come up with that messaging. If they're talking to our aging population that we like to say, they need to make sure that they're talking about what do you do if you don't have internet access? What do you do about the 1-800 number? So that messaging is different. So these complete count committees are going to spend the fall figuring out how they're going to impact, what they're going to do, what type of events, what I'm going to do to target my younger children, my 5 and under, is very different than what I'm going to do to target my college kids or my migrant workers. So they need that time to get together and meet and determine what are our strategies. How are we effectuating this message in these communities? Then they move into the awareness phase. So January is when they roll out their programs. Whatever they're doing, whatever they've decided on, that's January. Now, after January, once we start non-response follow-up, they're going to be a source of understanding when community members call in and say, hey, there's some strange people knocking at my door, I want to know what's going on, there's still a resource. I didn't fill my form out, what do I do? There's still a resource. And then the complete count committee concludes at about end of summer. So that's the life cycle of a complete count committee. You're welcome.
I just want something that have not been mentioned here that's very important at the local level, census jobs. I would like for Channa to try to give us some information on that, because that's an interest that we should be interested in locally. What census jobs is available to our community and the key thing related to that?
So as I mentioned earlier, we are the largest peacetime operation and we do hire locally from the area. In those packets, there's actually a website where you can apply for jobs. There's also a 1-800 number that you can call. They are on that card as well if you want to grab one. They are temporary jobs, however they pay weekly, they have a high pay rate, and it's a flex schedule. So you tell them when you want to work. So it's definitely advantageous for those of us who know people or may want part-time work or full-time work. We have area census offices that are opening now. We are hiring starting now all the way through summer operations.
My name is Lloyd from Georgia. And the county, you're mentioning everybody in the space. What if I may have a kid in college forever? How do I count him? Or do I count him?
We feel very sorry for you.
So students are interesting population. There are two separate, distinct ways that other operations that are included in the census that work a little differently. One is group quarters. Group quarters are dorms, prisons, and some assisted living facilities. The reason that we count them differently is because we can go to one administrator and they'll tell me how many kids are sleeping in this dorm, so the dorms don't each receive a questionnaire. So if they are present in the dorms, they should be counted there. Now, students are very unique because we here in Florida have a large amount of universities. The students that we are most worried about are the ones that are living off campus. Do you know why? They don't think about it. They think about it like taxes. My mom and dad will do that for me back home, right? They're not going to fill it out. They don't think about it. Here's the problem. You're here in Florida. You're using these resources. You need to be counted here. So we heavily target trying to speak to that section of the student population so they understand that if they're renting at home, they need to take that questionnaire out the mail and respond because they are here in Florida for the majority of the year. Therefore, they should be counted here. The other special initiative we have is the homeless. We do count the homeless. We work with a point in time and other groups that work with homeless to get a general idea and count of the homeless population.
David, I think,
I got a questionnaire a couple of months ago. Was that legal? Now, I'm hearing this came out, and like, why did I have to fill that out? And that citizen question was on there.
So we always have test groups. Some people do get the long form. It goes out ahead of time. It's still official, but that's random. And the reason they do that, again, feeds into quality assurance. So they do that. We've also run a test online census to see how people would respond, and it happened in like the Boston, Massachusetts area. That's already happened as well, and that was just to see how people would handle and for us to figure out where the pitfalls were with the online response. Interestingly enough, the group that did not answer, the highest group that responded well, was everyone over the age of 50. Why? Because they understand the importance of the census. So they found a way to get online and fill it out. It's actually our millennials that didn't answer, interestingly. It's online, but they didn't answer it because they don't understand the importance. So just a little sidebar. You will still get a postcard.
you won the lottery, but
yeah,
you didn't get any money.
Yes.
Lucky you.
What I wanted to mention, the other day I was in a group, and the question came up related to jobs for the census, and someone said, my grandson has signed up for the census, but she says, I'm wondering about the security in the areas that might not be a good environment. And no one had an answer to that. And I was wondering if there's other questions related to the security of those that are helping.
I'll speak to that in that we work really hard to pretend to our census workers that are out in the field. That's one of the reasons that we hire locally from the area and keep you in an area very near where you're living, because you understand the demographic of your area. Also, law enforcement is aware that the census workers, we let them know when we will be out, where we will be out, so they are aware that if they get a call from a census worker that they are to respond, they know we're there. We also have rules for our census. If they feel unsafe at any time, they can go out in pairs. There's a number of protections that we do build in because we know that going door to door in all neighborhoods is not always the best. But that's why we want people from those neighborhoods to apply for these jobs, because somewhere where I may not feel safe, you may feel safe, and you may not feel safe, but you feel safe because you understand and you know. I'm not just knocking on my door, I'm knocking on Miss Stone, but I know her from last week in lunch, and so it's a little different. That's why we really look to hire people within the community. You're welcome.
Hi there, Bert Perkins. Is there a penalty for non-response?
So it's interesting. It is one of the few things that is mandated by the Constitution that we respond. However, there's no, in fact, penalty. So there's no assigned penalty to non-response, but it is mandated. So you're right, there's no penalty.
There is a penalty for Friday Forum if you don't complete it.
Well,
we will get on your case.
And let me say this, the penalty, there's no governmental penalty, but your penalty is that when you have a classroom that has 20 kids instead of 16, that's the penalty. When you say, I want a grant, a Pell Grant for my kid to go to college and they don't get it, that is your penalty. When you say, why do I have potholes, that is your penalty. So you pay the penalty, whether you realize it or not, but that is your penalty. When you say, I don't have enough, there's no Y heap for me, that's your penalty. So these are, the penalties come whether we realize it or not.
She's good. We get Loretta here without tripping over myself. All right, here we go.
What is the protection against overcounting?
Overcounting?
So you mean if I report
Double
myself
count.
twice?
Overcounting.
So what happens is, as again I said, we get records from everywhere else. So when we start to, and when I say we, I mean the census, when the census notices that there are erroneous entries, that's when you're actually going to have someone come out and say, hi, I'm with quality assurance, let's complete this questionnaire. So that's what that is. So sometimes people say, well, I already completed it, someone knocked on my door, I filled it out, quality assurance comes back. Yes. Sure, go ahead.
Suppose you, locally, the committee is gonna get very, very creative, and with all these different people that you have on your committee, where's the funding going to come for you to do these initiatives that you want to do?
That'll be up to the committee to identify those sources. There is no funding that is in our budget to support this at this time. Now, we will have resources in the county by way of social media that we'll be utilizing, as well as just influence that we'll use with our website, but we do not have funding that we will say, and you've got X amount of budget to do your program with. But a lot of these programs, as you think about it, take place now, back to school bashes, backpack for kids. It's really going to be adding into a lot of the activities that go on now. And I'll also share with you the Early Learning Coalition. I mean, they have over 200 plus providers for child care. Roseanne Fricks leads that, the Success by Six program with Chrissy Vickers. Those will be people who will be talking to a lot of the parents of these children, again, making sure that we are getting those counts done. So in church socials, functions in churches now, it's really going to just be adding on to a lot of things that happen in communities today.
Okay. Let me speak to Ms. Jenkins' question about today. Those of you that take the Ocala stop in today, did you see the article in there on the census today? Okay, if you haven't read it, let me just read to you. Leon County, the city of Tallahassee and Leon County have each allocated a total of $20,000 for public outreach meant to encourage participation in areas that historically do not have a complete census count, according to Tallahassee Mayor John Dale and Leon County Commissioner Rick Mann. The question is that this issue is a leadership issue. The counties that understand the importance of this are putting in budgets to deal with it. Now, if the county and the city have not done that, then you need to take that into consideration of their priorities. It's the very same by the government. California has put in the 2000 census, the governor of California put in $24 million to administer the census. I can tell you that that was the year that we did the Florida census, and I don't know the exact number, but the program that I administered, we had to put in a competitive RFP, and we got $100,000 of the program that I administered. I administered a $100,000 program. So if our county and city have not addressed that, that's a question that somebody needs to start talking about. Thank you.
If I could follow up on that.
There are a lot of grant processes available to the county, but to take general fund dollars is really not going to be necessary, in my opinion, because we do have grant funding through our community block grants to get into those areas if necessary. And we also have resources. We have over $1 million that we set aside in reserves. We have not budgeted funds. Quite frankly, $20,000 for Leon County is a drop in the bucket. So, you know, just because we haven't set aside dollars, we have set aside resources of people at this moment, and we don't know what we're going to need, but there are resources available if necessary. But there are also people in this community that I think are already doing things, and this is going to be an add-on to what's being done now. And so anyway, and I'm anxious to talk to Mr. Jenkins to hear some of his ideas.
Okay. I know Deborah had given another question. She's way over her limit for questions today and commentary. Give her a word.
Ocala is growing in leaps and bounds. How do you contact all these new residents coming in, like the end of the year or the first of the year?
So there's a couple of things. When we have new developments, the census process actually happens with the local government a little earlier. There's something called LUCA, which is Local Update Canvas Address. where they let us know, hey, we have these new housing developments that have been built, we have these new areas, that whatever's new, whatever's changed, they actually sent that in. That happened 18 months ago. We then add those addresses to our list. So we've started this process a long time ago. Now, as far as individual people, that's what this is about. This is education phase that we're in now. This is the purpose of this. I go around, this is all I do, workshops. I do this all day. Karen, Armand, somewhere, there we go. It's not just myself. I just happen to work heavily with the counties. That's what they have me assigned to. But there's many of us. Karen resides in Marion County. She is every day working with a different group in Marion County. Armand is in Alachua. So there's many of us partnership, thank you. There's many of us partnership specialists around, and so these kind of educations, because now we are 3, but when we walk out of this room, we just became what, 80? Right? So if each of you tell 2 people, where did we just go? I'm an attorney, I'm not good at math, just go ahead and count that out. That's a lot of people, right? More than I could have reached by myself. And that's the purpose of this. This is why communities, trusted voices in each and every one of you is important. Because when you leave here and someone says something about the census, you're going to correct them. You're going to let them know, and that's how it works. This is on us. This is on us helping each other make our communities better. So that's what this is about. And another thing I will say in regards to that, when we're working, we try to form partnerships with other organizations, local businesses, that when they say, hey, listen, I don't have staff, but I can print you 100 flyers, we try to connect them with the Complete Count Committee. When someone says, well, a church says, hey, I have computers, people can come in on this day and that day, and we'll help them fill out and get logged on to fill out their census forms, we connect them with the Complete Count Committee. These are resources. We are all helping each other make this a better count. So this is on us. So that is why it's so important for this education phase.
Good. Okay, you want to head to the back, and I'm going to get this lady, because Pat Keith has already asked a question, I think, and we're not going to let her be like Deborah. So.
Hello, everybody. This question is directly to Hannah Lloyd. Census is about numbers, right? When we talk about counting, do we have to segregate, classify? We are counting humans. But when you start making too many questions, we have to be clear and sincere. People get scared and they don't want to give information. So I hope that the application or the form is also bilingual and very easy to fill.
So in 2010, it was 10 questions. So they try to keep it concise. I don't have the exact number. It hasn't been approved by the Supreme Court yet on how many questions there are. It is bilingual. The 1-800 number that you can access. We actually have 17 languages. We're looking to increase that. So if you need to speak to someone in a language other than English, you can speak with someone in your indigenous language. We're at 17, 19, looking to increase that. Because they do realize that that is something that we face every day. We are a melting pot at this point of different communities and different ethnicities. And so we do address that, and we try to make sure that we have materials that are in language. Now, that's another part where partners are very important, because if you have a subcommittee that we call them unique populations. So in Orange County, I have one that's it's geared towards my Hispanic market. They are a subcommittee. They translate, they do everything in language. Do I speak Spanish? No, but Karen does. And I have partnership specialists that go out and do these workshops in language. We do them in Haitian Creole. We have Asian partnership specialists. So yes, we are aware, and we really do try to address that dynamic, but we also try to work with individuals such as yourself within the community to help us do that.
Yeah, with immigration before,
Okay.
with citizenship, we have first, third,
Well,
the main concern is that we start counting and classifying to say, okay, you're American citizen, you are going to use all the sources. This is not American citizen, we don't help.
Well, let me just address that.
Everybody needs, as a human, to be
Right.
and take care of.
I agree. And the census counts everyone living. There's no word in front of living. Living in the United States, that is the purpose of the census. The reason that we have had Title 13 and the sealing of the records is because the forefathers understood that if we don't count everybody, the resources don't go to the right communities. So if you have 10 people, but you only count 5, you're shorting the community as a whole. So that is why, yes, and we work really hard to communicate that. That's our goal, but I don't dictate how many questions are on it,
Okay,
unfortunately.
I think the question was answered. Let's indulge Pat Keith one more time.
You're so good to me.
I know, I'm just giving it away today.
I'd like to encourage Ms. Stone to use her position as chair of the county commission to convey to them how we feel about the importance of this complete count and to encourage them to allocate money for us to do this. I don't think it should be a hit or miss kind of thing. I don't think we should say, well, maybe we'll get some grants. I think we should say this is a critical issue for our state and our county, and we need to allocate money for it.
Okay. Chris, you've been sitting there the whole time. You've been very quiet. And you're the guy who knows a lot about what happened in the last census. What are we missing stuff? Are there things that you can add to this discussion? Go ahead.
Chris Ryden with the Growth Services Department. I mean, these questions that you're asking are the questions that have come up every 10 years. And they're good questions, and that's why we're trying to get you these answers. Because we need you to spread them out through your community. The question about answering the census in the past was actually a much longer form. They have broken down the Decennial Census to the 10 questions, and they're looking to keep it generally in that location. Because what we do have in the census operations overall, and this of course Channa knows I'm sure, is there's 2 types of censuses. The Decennial Census is the one every 10 years where we just want to count the people. We don't care who you are, what you are, we just want to know you're here. Because when you're here, you're contributing to our economy and everything else. You're paying those tax dollars for whatever you're doing. Today, when you bought your meal, you paid your 6% restaurant tax, for instance. For the state of Florida, they use those same numbers when they distributed state monies back out to those communities. If you don't get counted, they don't send the money here, they send it to Dade County. They send it to Orange County. So then, now your local government, and you as a taxpayer in your local government, have to make up those differences because it's not coming from the state. So that's part of where you want to make sure that our community gets fully counted so that what we contribute can come back to us in some way, shape, or form. Just to point out is the census activity did begin already with Marion County's resources. As part of our normal duties, we've been meeting with different census representatives and taking part in their programs. The first was the local program, which was to try to get all of the addresses out to the census for them to utilize. And there's a continuing program to continually update the census on the new addresses as they come online. Actually, our offices work with the census too to look at the arrangements of the actual census tracts. Because what they do in between the Decennial Census, they do the American Community Survey. So that gives them an idea of where the different increases are occurring. So they try to look in advance to see how they might break down a census tract to split it apart because it's become too large, or break down a tract block group to make it smaller because it's become too large. And so we've tried to provide input to them to help them become more familiar with it. Because coming out of Washington, D.C., they don't know where the river is in Marion County. They want to break the census tract on the river so they got it in the right location. So they look for us to help work with them to confirm that for them. So it's an ongoing process that we've been working on for the last year and a half, actually. And we don't expect it to finish until next year. And then the fun part will be then we get to do our own reapportionment as we rearrange all of our representation both federally and locally.
Okay. Just about done. Let me ask a question I was going to ask before. We're in this. Well, we just went through this craziness with the immigration question being on the census, and apparently government agencies already have all this information, which left a lot of us saying, why did we just ask them for the information in the first place? But we are an information-rich society, and the census, while yes, it's mandated in the Constitution, it seems like a rather old-fashioned way of doing what we are able to extrapolate from a lot of numerical resources and counting services already. Is there a specific reason why we still do this peculiar counting thing every 10 years besides the Constitution? Couldn't we do it without this? Could we have accurate information?
That's a very intriguing question. And what I'm going to say is that it is mandated. That's why we still do it. It is self-reporting because we want, they believed that people answering themselves gave us the most accurate count. And as of today or recently, the Supreme Court has decided that although we can use it to get an idea of how many did not answer, we just can't access those records and use them alone. So that's really up to them. And until it's changed, this is what we're going to be doing.
Okay, all right. Well, panel, I want to thank you very much. You've all been very informative. I learned a lot, I think everybody did. So thank you so much for taking time and joining us today. Delphine, you're not going to let us take any time off this summer, are you?
No, but first I want to say, thanks to Bridges, Bert Perkins president, we now have a video camera available. This has been videotaped and will be posted in several places, my personal site and the Friday Forum Facebook, and wherever Bruce thinks it's appropriate.
We'll get it on YouTube again.
So you can share this information further. Next time we will have candidates for the mayor of Ocala, one of whom is gracing us with her presence right now.
Yeah, don't forget to tip your server and stay cool. We'll see you next month.